under working full time.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the council meeting of there's no date on my piece of paper. 25th of July, 2023. Thanks all. Welcome to the meeting. Welcome members of the public gallery. It's lovely to see you here this evening. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay respects to elders past and present. In relation to apologies, we do have apologies this evening from Councillor Ross Iapolo. Next item is public question time and receiving of public statements. So welcome. I do know many of your faces and most of you will probably know the drill, but for those who haven't attended before, there's no set order. It's just whoever would like to approach the microphone first. We just do ask that you state your name, the suburb in which you reside, and the item that you're speaking to tonight. And we do time to 3 minutes, which will appear on the screen. So welcome. Public question time is now open.
My name is Nick Roberts, a resident of Leederville Gardens. I wish to speak on the bike plan. As chairperson of Leederville Gardens Residents Association, we wish to follow up a letter of the 6th of June, where we stated 6 reasons for opposing a new bike path between Britannia Road and Burke Street. Up to 15 similar responses were noted after the consultation period ended, showing this was a very dangerous and unnecessary idea. The mayor noted that she felt there was room between the existing pathway and the new light for a new path, but is completely missing the point of fast speeding cyclists, ruining the safety and enjoyment that currently exists, with elderly residents of our retirement village, walkers, families with young children learning to bike, young families with prams, dogs able to run free, and the many, many sporting activities that are watched in that area, particularly at weekends. It also makes viewing the known village, as you mentioned, a dangerous exercise, thus losing its appeal. The mayor obviously wishes an accident to happen on her watch. She requested the plan.
I think that's actually pretty unnecessary to say that. This is actually my local park too, and I would not want an accident to happen at this park. So please don't make it a personal issue about me wanting accidents to happen. Thank you. If you could continue.
She requested the plan be updated with the consultation outcomes. We wonder if this has happened. At the briefing, it appeared the gentleman tasked with talking about this plan had no idea what he was going on about and got this confused with the traffic calming in Britannia Road. It would appear at the moment that it's a lot easier for the council to get the Matlock Road issue sorted out before continuing on with the problems on East Britannia Road. We have seen many people criticising in the context of the original plans, but nobody actually stating that they are in favour of it. I'm talking about obviously members of the public. I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Narelle O'Neill, Mount Hawthorn. I'd like to address item 10.1, bike plan, and ask you to please not approve the bike plan as it is until amendments are made to it. Firstly, this is not just a bike plan, it's a bike and e-scooter plan. As we all know, all bike paths are now e-scooter paths, and that has not been acknowledged, and I think it's something that needs to be. In the attachment of the documents you have, 28 respondents replied to the question, do you support the proposed bike plan? Less than half fully support it, yet you're now being asked to approve it. There were minor changes to that. One, the Britannia Reserve is already too dangerous for reasons outlined by the previous speaker. The proposed change to address that was to change the wording from Britannia Reserve as a link between Britannia Road and Burke Street and it's to become a community route for local movements between Britannia Road and Burke Street. I'm really intrigued to know exactly how that will be managed. It's already chaotic and dangerous for all users. So add to that mix speeding cycles and e-scooters, more than we already have, and it can simply not be managed. There are already 3 access points: Oxford Street, Brentham Street, and the top of Britannia Road to the freeway bike path. We do not need a 4th. A 110 signature petition has already been presented to the council back in March, highlighting how dangerous this path already is and asking that it be for pedestrians and very young cyclists. The council's solution to that was to put stickers on the footpath, which of course have absolutely no impact at all on the danger of the area. So it's only going to become worse. That widening the path will make it more dangerous. And I would ask you to please not approve the bike plan as it is. It's a bike and scooter plan. And please delete any reference to the Britannia Reserve path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Narelle. Next speaker, please.
Leslie Flory of Mount Hawthorn. Good evening, Mayor Cole and councillors. Each year, the City of Vincent spends large sums of ratepayers' funds upgrading and maintaining the city's assets. Those assets which are visual to the ratepayers, for example, Beatty Park, Leederville Oval. It's interesting to note that in the West Australian on the 22nd of July, it states Ms. Cole said the city has spent over $5 million over the past 5 years on Beatty Park. However, from my research, very little has been invested to maintain the city's major underground asset, being stormwater pipes. I have 5 questions and 1 comment. Question 1. Prior to me finding the large stormwater pipe on my property in 2021, who was the asset management officer and the team involved? Question 2. Does the City of Vincent have access to the State Records Office of WA where the retro maps are readily available? Question 3. Does the City of Vincent have access to the City of Vincent Library and local historical centre? Question 4. Can you confirm that the local government was a project partner in collection of the historical retro maps data? Question 5. In 2021 and 2022, the annual report, the city managed 105 kilometres of drainage. Does this include the main stormwater pipes in East Street, Sass Ave and Linton Street, Mount Hawthorn? I'd also like to make comment. The first of the winter rains fell on Sunday, the 4th of June. 2023. Linton Street, Mount Hawthorn was once again flooded. The worst we've seen it, said one resident. The City of Vincent solution that week was to provide 4 of the residents with 10 sandbags each. This was very little comfort to the residents. The City of Vincent needs to be held accountable for the years of flooding, years of neglect, years of minimal action and failing to take responsibility to maintain the proper stormwater drainage system. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. We'll get answers to your questions on notice. So thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Yeah, Linda Harris from Brentham Street, Leederville. I also would like to speak about the proposed bike plan. On item 19 and page 37, it reads, investigate the options to provide safe cycling along the eastern side of Britannia Reserve to provide a community route for local residents between Britannia Road and Burke Street. My understanding is that the briefing last week, the council advised they were considering a new bike path parallel to the walking track on the east side of the reserve. I regard this as an extremely bad suggestion and a waste of taxpayers' money. So why? I am a bike rider. I cycle regularly to work and often ride bicycles as recreation. I also live beside the reserve, and yes, I am a ratepayer and I regularly walk in this area. Already there are excellent safe cycling paths for local residents between Burke Street and Britannia Road, that is running north to south. From east to west, the reserve is about 300 or 400 metres wide. So on the west side, there are in fact 3 cycling paths, 3. There is an excellent public shared path, which is wide and safe and well used by all. Then there are dirt tracks, which are fun for those with mountain bikes. There are 2, back and up and down. These tracks are very safe, although not well used. Come across the park, as I said, about 300 or 400 metres wide to the east side, where the council is considering another track. There is a single row of houses and then another quiet street connecting Burke and Britannia. This is Brentham Street. This becomes busy at school pickup times, but on weekends and on other times is quiet and safe. This is an excellent way for local residents to ride their bikes. Then come one further block back to the east. There is Oxford Street. Again, there is a connection between Burke and Brentham Street with a cycle lane running along both sides of Oxford Street. Again, this is perfect for local residents. As a cyclist, I have used all these parks and I have no problem with any of them. So we have a total of 5 cycle paths between Burke and Brentham Streets, and the council is considering putting in number 6. This is a total waste of ratepayers' money. And who will use the new bike path? Not commuters riding to work. They already use the existing cycle paths. No, it will be irresponsible e-scooters and a few people too lazy to ride a couple of extra 100 metres to the existing bike paths. And moreover, consider those who walk and play in the reserve. The elderly, toddlers learning to walk, school children riding to school, and this has always been
Linda,
allowed.
you have reached 3 minutes, but if you can
Okay.
just conclude, that would
I
be
will conclude. Putting
appreciated.
it in a bike path where these people will inevitably be an accident. Hopefully not a child. There will be an accident involving dogs. So I presume eventually the council is going to ban dogs from reserve that are off lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We won't be banning dogs from being off lead at Britannia, just to reassure you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Trent Will from Taylor Burrell Barnett, speaking on item 9.2 of the agenda, speaking on behalf of the applicant. Firstly, just like to assure councillors that we support the officer's recommendation. We have no concerns with the conditions of approval. As you would have gauged from the agenda, we have worked quite diligently to respond to requests from the city's officers and the design review panel, and there have been several iterations of the plans to get the application to this point. We are really pleased with the design outcome. It is a different design. The standard approach for something like this would be to have a driveway down the side of the property, usually the full depth of the lot. But we knew this business as usual approach would mean that a large portion of the site would be paved. It would contribute to the urban heat island effect, and everything also becomes a bit cramped for the dwellings. So we went about this a bit of a different way. The design has a central car park, and the front dwellings obviously sleeve the car park from the street. And then you have a little European style access to the rear dwellings. And this approach we think was really successful because it frees up a lot of the site for landscaping, and we think it's produced a good design outcome. Secondly, and just briefly, apologies, we were not able to attend the agenda briefing last week, but we did have a chance to review the matter online. I just wanted to offer a few quick comments in response to the items that were raised to hopefully assist with your decision. With regard to the dilapidation report, I can confirm we have no objection to providing these, and note the condition has been updated in the agenda accordingly. There were some queries about the darker monument colour of the cladding for the dwellings. We do appreciate this has a higher heat absorption compared to lighter colour cladding, but we do think it responds best to the heritage listed property next door. And this colour selection was partly guided by the design review panel feedback. We have also demonstrated through the sustainability reporting that the dwellings can achieve a 65% carbon life cycle reduction, which was a really positive outcome. And finally, there was a question about a potential street tree in front of the church. My client would not have any objection to providing an additional street tree if this were required by council. However, this gap in the street trees, I think, does allow a nice little vista through to the facade of the heritage listed church, and providing a street tree could potentially obscure that view. But notwithstanding, we'll respect whatever council decides on that matter. So again, we respectfully ask for your approval this evening. Be happy to answer any questions if that's permitted.
Thanks, Trent. Appreciate your deputation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Lewis Sugar. I'm an associate at Element representing East Metropolitan Health Service, and I'm here to express support for item 9.9 on the agenda tonight, being the outcomes of advertising for Amendment 11 to Local Planning Scheme number 2, relating to Royal Perth Hospital emergency flight path protection. Following my comments made at the council briefing last week on the item, additional information has been circulated to elected members, and I trust that that answers a number of the queries raised, and thank you for providing us with the opportunity to do so. A number of key stakeholders have been involved in carefully considering the two most appropriate flight path routes needing to be protected to support the emergency rescue helicopter service operations at RPH. One of the two routes will traverse in a northeasterly direction, curving towards the Swan River and utilising major road and rail reservations to limit the overall impact on private land holdings. Proposed Amendment 11 to the city's LPS 2 concerns a portion of the northeastern flight path route only. 14.7% of the total northeastern flight path will locate within the city's local government area, the rest being confined to the city of Perth. The flight path proposal will have no impact on the existing development potential of private land holdings within the city or future development potential envisaged through the draft North Claysbrook planning framework, with heights of around 16 stories being envisaged. Now, this does differ from the impact borne to private land holdings within the city of Perth, where existing development potential may be impacted, depending on the type of development being delivered. The proposed amendment ultimately seeks to strike a balance between limiting the impact of private land holdings within the city, whilst ensuring the safety of emergency helicopter operations for RPH, and in particular, the State Medical Trauma Unit. Your support for Amendment 11 to the city's LPS 2 is crucial and will enable the state to continue providing critical care to those in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciated the additional submission that you forwarded to us. It was very useful information. Thanks for that. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. Ashley LaFontaine of North Perth. I'm speaking in support of item 13.1, the motion to prohibit third-party advertising at Hyde Park. I applaud administration's support of this motion, particularly given the many visual changes which have occurred at the park in recent years. I can understand utilising the light poles to temporarily advertise events at Hyde Park, such as the Hyde Park Festival. However, I do not agree with some of the examples provided to advertise events which are off-site and or part of a bigger community engagement process. There are plenty of places with high exposure to advertise, and Hyde Park as a heritage place is not one of them. The signs will distract from the features which contribute to the significance of the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Next speaker, please. Anyone further wishing to speak this evening? Okay, thank you very much all for coming and for your comments. You're very welcome to stay, and we do deal with the items that you've raised first so that you don't have to wait around if you wouldn't like to listen to us debate the many items on the agenda this evening. But we do have a few items to go through before we get to that. So the next item is response to previous public questions taken on notice, just noting that those responses are contained in the papers, in the agenda papers, and also in relation to written statements and questions that we've received this evening. There have been a few. We've had public state questions from Stephen Williams of North Perth, Glenn Christie of Mount Lawley, Dudley Meyer of Highgate. Lewis, we've got you here as well, but we've heard from you in person today, and that was all. Okay, so applications for leave of absence. We do have one this evening, and this is a request from Councillor Iopolo, who has requested a leave of absence from the 26th of July to the 30th of September 2023 inclusive. Councillors, could I please have a mover and seconder to support the leave of absence? Councillor Castle moving, seconded by Councillor Wallace. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Item 5, the receiving of petitions, deputations and presentations. There are none this evening. So I'll go to confirmation of minutes. These are for the ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of June 2023. If I could please have a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Hallett, seconded by Councillor Castle. All those in favour? I declare the minutes carried. Announcements by the presiding member. I hope that you can indulge me this evening because I do wish to make a statement which is probably a reflection on local government, but also probably one that is quite personal. So it goes a little something like this. Local government is a deeply rewarding experience. To be the advocate for the place you love and the community you're proud to serve is a privilege. The role of mayor requires both heart and mind, and to feel that deep connection to Vincent makes the role of mayor so much easier. I'm incredibly proud to show that local government can be positive and pragmatic whilst bringing progressive values to decision making. It can be collegiate. A mayor can be a leader amongst peers. We have been able to work through tough decisions beyond the election cycle to make long-term decisions for Vincent's sustainable future. We know how important it is to maintain roads, rates and rubbish well. Our roads and assets are well maintained. We are on a financially sustainable path with our rates income, yet in terms of value for money, we remain extremely competitive with our neighbours. We remain in the bottom third lowest rating councils. We have transformed the way we deal with our rubbish, with our community making FOGO a success story as we've diverted 7,000 tonnes from landfill. But we've shown that it's possible for local government to be more than the 3 Rs, that we can aim high on our sustainability actions in the face of climate change, that we can represent our diverse community on issues that matter to them, like the marriage equality plebiscite and the Uluru Statement from the Heart. There is a role for placemaking and supporting public art in all of its forms, including film, music and creative spaces. That local government can be swift to adapt and respond when our community and local businesses really need it. And the COVID years demonstrated this. And I really remember those meetings that Councillor Castle and Councillor Gontaszewski and I sat with our executive team during COVID, dealing with the issues as they came forward, and incredible health response there. And David and his support for staff pivoting so quickly to ensure that all of our staff could work from home. I think we're the fastest local government to do that. David, well done. Being an elected representative on behalf of your community brings an incredible responsibility, and I hope that I've been able to demonstrate that I've been committed in heart and mind throughout the past 10 years. I haven't always pleased everyone, but I've made decisions that I feel have been the right ones based on the information that I've had before me. It's a role like no other in terms of the breadth of issues that are to be problem solved, championed and advocated for, but at times it has been all-consuming. 10 years for me is a long time in local government. Long enough to see a great deal of positive change, but also long enough to crave quieter evenings and weekends, more time to help with the homework, although the boys won't really like that, to be with family and neglected friends, and to walk the dog, probably at Britannia Reserve. My youngest was just 3 years old when I took the plunge to run for Vincent Council, and now we're organising the 13th birthday party. So it's time for me to be a resident again in my community. I remain committed for the next 3 months up to the October election, but I won't be seeking re-election. I have many people to thank, and this is just a very brief high-level overview, but I'd like to say thank you to the community for their support over this time and the trust that they have placed in me. To the Vincent volunteers who make this place tick, the town teams, the community organisations, the P&Cs, the multicultural groups, our LGBTIQ+ groups, our arts groups, so many to mention. You have inspired me with your dedication throughout because you are the community doers. If I was ever having a difficult day in local government, all I needed to do was to go to a community meeting, an AGM, an event, and to just feel completely inspired and sustained by these incredible people that do so much good work in our community. To Team Vincent, the people who turn up every day, that bring a strong sense of pride and purpose, and being so positive in this culture that that David and you all have created here in this great workplace. Your work touches on so many elements of neighbourhood life, and it really does make a difference. And I thank you so much. To those I've worked most closely with, Kylie, Manuela and Alicia before them, my daily work crew, I say thank you. And to David, the exec management team and the communications team who I regularly have contact with, thank you for your support in this role. To our up and coming managers, to our incredible planning teams who show that the future of local government is oh so bright, to the folks that bring beauty to the everyday like our parks team, and those that might not be public facing but make a big difference like our finance team. There are so many to mention, and I will be contacting our staff just to let them know how thankful I am, and hopefully having conversations with them when I see them. To the council, both past and present, I've had the privilege of working with highly dedicated and brilliant colleagues throughout my time, starting out with former Mayor John Carey, former Councillor Josh Toppelberg. I've been inspired by Jimmy Murphy and Joanne Fotakis, and I've had the pleasure to work the longest with incredibly talented Deputy Mayor Susan Gontaszewski. Thank you so much, Susan. Followed then by Councillor Dan Loden and Councillor Jonathan Hallett and Councillor Alex Castle. You've been here quite a long time too. More recently, Councillor Ashley Wallace, who's just coming up to 4 years, and then our 3 new council members, Susan, Ron and Ross. I'd like to thank you all, and I wish you all the best, and I very much appreciate the commitment, effort and passion that you bring to Vincent. Of course, I have to thank my John, who without this wouldn't be possible. Thank God that I have a husband who likes to food shop and cook, as well as managing his own demanding career, and to our boys. In short, it takes a village, and Vincent is one heck of a village. So thank you all. CEO, are there any declarations of interest?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Cole. The declarations of interest for tonight's meeting are as follows. Councillor Gontaszewski declared a proximity interest in relation to item 10.1, the bike plan, noting that one of the proposed bike lanes is in proximity to the Deputy Mayor's residential property. She is not seeking approval to participate in the debate or to remain in the chambers or vote on the matter. Councillor Warner declared an impartiality interest in relation to item 9.9, outcome of advertising, Amendment 11 to LPS 2, Royal Perth Hospital Emergency Flight Path. The extent of the interest is that the consultant element is a supporter of Rev Film Festival via a board member. They offer support and grant applications, no financial support. Councillor Hallett declared a proximity interest in relation to item 10.1, the bike plan, noting the extent of the interest is that action 4.5 relates to a proposed bike lane, which is in proximity to his residential property. He is not seeking approval to participate in the debate or to remain in the chambers or vote in the matter. And Councillor Alexander declared an impartiality interest in relation to item 13.1, the notice of motion prohibition on third-party advertising in Hyde Park. The extent of the interest is that Councillor Alexander's residential address is adjacent to Hyde Park, and he is acquainted with nearby residents who have raised concerns about potential advertising on the new light poles. And that's all the interest received for tonight's agenda, Mayor Cole.
Thank you very much, CEO. Are there any last minute declarations of interest, councillors? Okay, thank you. All right, so far we have had the following items raised by members in the public gallery: 10.1, 9.2, 9.8. We do have a couple of absolute majority decisions noted also on the agenda, so they will also be called out, as well as the audit committee. Where's audit committee? 12.2. In addition to those items, councillors, do you wish to pull out items for debate? Councillor Hallett,
12.1,
Councillor Castle, Councillor Wallace, Councillor Warner, Councillor Loden,
10.3 and 9.10, please.
9.10.
Not sure if that is that absolute majority or is that
No,
no?
that's
Okay, yeah, then
but-
9.10.
yeah, 9.10. Yep. Councillor Alexander, Councillor Gonchevsky. Okay, let me just double check. Audit committee. Look, I'm just also going to call out 10.4, which is the Beatty Park tender.
Through you, Mayor Cole, I will now read out the agenda items that are being proposed to be moved en bloc, which are as follows: item 9.1, item 9.3, item 9.4, item 9.5, item 9.6, item 9.7, item 9.8, item 11.1, item 11.2, item 11.3, 11.4.
Sorry, CEO, in relation to the flight path item 9.8. My apologies, that was raised in the public gallery, so I do
sorry.
need to bring that one out.
Not
Yeah,
9.8.
not 9.8.
And then items 11.2, 11.3 and 11.4 and item 12.3.
I think it was the member from the gallery said 9.9, but they meant 9.8. So I think 9.9 should be on block as well.
Okay. 9.9 on block? No. 9.9 is the helicopter. Yeah.
My agenda says 9.9 is amendment to the municipal heritage inventory, which wasn't discussed during public question time, but 9.8 is the amendment to the scheme. Oh, I think that Dan and I have got the same agenda because mine says
I can
9.8.
confirm the mayor's position.
So what are we working off here? We have to understand which number we're talking about. Online, it is 9.9. So I think we have to go with 9.9 on the understanding that 9.9 is the amendment to the outcome of advertising for amendment 11 to the local planning scheme number 2.
Wendy, do you have all of those? Yep.
Do we need to just quickly go through the items that we are, just because that was a little bit confusing. So just to summarise, it's 9.2, 9.9, 9.10, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 12.1, 12.2 and 13.1. Sorry, we have a numbering issue that we're just trying to get on top of to make sure that we adopt the right items on block.
So through Mayor Cole, just to confirm the outcomes of advertising for character area guidelines, which we are calling item 9.8, is being proposed to be moved on block as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Can I please have a mover and seconder for the on block items? Moved by councillor Warner, seconded by councillor Loden. All those in favour? I declare the on block items carried. Okay, so the first item that was raised, we do have two council members with a proximity interest. So I'll just have to ask councillor Gondaszewski and councillor Hallett to leave the chamber for this item. So this is item 10.1, the bike plan 2022 to 2028. Can I please have a mover and seconder for this item? Moved by councillor Loden, seconded by councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Mayor. To follow up, I think you heard the questions from the gallery, but just to reiterate my interpretation of them anyway. The first one is just around how do we address e-scooters in this context, given e-scooters can also ride on bike paths, and is that a consideration in how we put this plan together and that potential conflict between pedestrians and bikes? And secondly, this sort of reality of multiple bike lanes all running north, south in about a 200 to 300 metre distance between them all. If you could provide some comments back on that.
Through the chair. So the bike plan focuses primarily on cycle facilities, noting that footpaths in general do cater for different modes of transport. The bike plan does generally focus on cycle routes and connecting these cycle routes together. In terms of the route, and I believe it was action number 19 in the bike plan, it's only to investigate a route through Britannia Reserve. It's not saying we're going to build a 4.5 metre wide cycle route through that reserve. It's just an additional route that the engineering team will look at. A lot of these routes within Britannia Road itself are like level 3 stress rated through the bike plan, which means they're comfortable for experienced riders. And we're trying to connect up through the freeway to Oxford Street, through Britannia Road area itself safely. And again, it's only an investigation on a potential route through Britannia Reserve. It's not going to mean we're going to design a 4.5 metre bike through that space.
I guess we've got Brentham Street, which is like between 50 and 70 metres further to the east. That is not a more suitable, is there a reason why that's not the more suitable location to have this bike path?
Through the chair, that route has been identified in the long-term cycle plan that was presented by the Department of Transport. I believe it was adopted or endorsed by Council in August 2020. So obviously them routes will be fully funded by the Department of Transport. That would be one of our preferred routes. But again, the other route, action 19, is only to investigate that option, not saying we're going to do it.
So if council was of the view that we shouldn't even investigate, that we should just remove that as an activity and instead look to utilise the existing infrastructure along the freeway, potentially Bentham Street, once that funding comes through, then Oxford Street as well. Is from administration's perspective, would you prefer that we made that as an amendment to the bike plan now, or would you prefer that we defer it to allow some further consideration and discussion?
Through the chair, I would rather that be an amendment to be taken out of the bike plan. The bike plan has went through the Department of Transport. The funding agreement's executed, everything's completed. So if there was a small amendment not to investigate that, there wouldn't be an issue. Again, the Department of Transport long-term cycle network has the routes, as Brantham Street is on one of them routes. So as long as they would stay the same, there would be no issues with taking out that action 19.
And does administration have any feedback on that as a proposed amendment?
Through the chair, you would like, I suppose if the bike plan was adopted without action 19 within it, I wouldn't see an issue with that.
I'm the mover, so I can't move an amendment, but I'll just flag for you, Wendy, if you could prepare an amendment to delete item. I think you're right. I think it is action 19 from there to do that investigation. And I can let other people speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Probably a related question. I was going to ask what the impact of, oh, sorry, you're the seconder.
Bit presumptuous there, Councillor Castle. We'll come back to you.
I appreciate your passion on the item. I guess just back on that similar item, what does the investigation process look like? So this is going into the bike plan now. Like what kind of factors would you be considering? What kind of things are you looking at if you were to undertake this investigation of this bike route that's kind of like not already in the plan?
Through the chair, I suppose the reason that the engineering team wanted to investigate that route is that it's a safe route. It's through a reserve. There's obviously risks involved when you're cycling on the road. When you have these facilities that are off road through a reserve, for instance, it's a lot safer. So that's mainly the main reason would be road safety. It's a lot safer to have it through a reserve than on the road.
Okay. Okay. If it was passed as is, what would be the process for implementing it? Is that a further decision of council before that bike path would go in, or is that admin would undertake the investigation and choose to implement it on their own, or is it through the budgeting process?
Through the chair, so there's a number of actions. I believe there's 60 actions. So if it was adopted, them actions would be adopted with the bike plan. The process of each individual project, for instance, Norfolk Street, would need to come through the normal budget process, and we'd bid for budget, whatever that design would look like.
Is there much difference in your opinion just on the e-scooters again? I guess with different issues that require management between e-scooters and bikes, or a different risk profile or anything like that? Does that feed into our considerations?
Through the chair, it's a good question. It's a topic that the engineering team have been working with the Department of Transport. The Department of Transport is taking out a strategic document to look at all modes of transport, and through that strategic document to give a little bit more direction in regards to e-scooters and different modes of transport using a shared path.
All right, thanks. I'm generally supportive of the plan, but also open to the idea of this amendment if that comes forward. Go right ahead, Councillor Castle.
Thank you. Apologies again. I got excited because I wanted to piggyback on Councillor Loden's question about action 19. I'm just wondering if you can explain what the difference between any path on the eastern side would be between that and the existing path on the freeway.
Through the chair, I suppose the path on the freeway is a large path. It'll be 4.5–5 meters wide. If there was a path to go through the reserve, it may not be as wide. Just for cycling, it may be slightly smaller, but through the design phase, we would look into that. But again, the action's only to investigate. It's not to implement any paths through the reserve. It's just to look at that option.
Okay, so maybe to ask that a different way, what would a path on the eastern side offer that the freeway path doesn't already offer?
Through the chair, the freeway path would have a lot of cyclists, and so there'd be a large number of cyclists using that path. We wouldn't foresee that number of cyclists using if there was a path through the reserve, and it's safer. You know, when you use these paths through the reserve, versus the on-road option, it is a lot safer to use the paths and reserves.
So safer for cyclists, not necessarily for other users.
Correct. It'll be safer for the cyclists, yes.
Yeah, I find that curious given that the rating of the PSP is comfortable for all ages and abilities. But I understand the point you're making. I had in mind to ask the question how administration would feel about simply deleting the words along the eastern side. But I'm also of a mind to support a amendment to remove it altogether. So I don't know if you have any feedback on whether an action that didn't indicate the eastern side would be of any use.
Through the chair, I suppose the eastern side from memory has a path already along that route, which is relatively straight. And so we would look to utilise that existing infrastructure and upgrade it through that process of investigation.
So you'd be unlikely to consider any other paths through Britannia if it didn't indicate eastern side.
Through the chair, the preferred option would be to use the existing infrastructure, yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, look, I think that we've seen certainly some community concern, and there is already other options in this area. So I would support an amendment if it comes forward.
Can I just comment before you do? Look, being a local, I think there's a few observations here. I mean, it's been described tonight as already being chaotic and dangerous. And I think what the bike plan has tried to do by including this investigation is to actually look at it more closely. There has been the petition where some of the local residents have asked us to go back to requiring the existing narrow pedestrian path to be for cyclists under 12 only. In the time that the City of Vincent put that path in, and it was a narrow path, it wasn't a full shared path width. The road traffic regulations, I can't, code, I'm looking at you, Director, as a manager, but there was a change, and I remember it was under the former police minister in the former government, where the government made a change to say that all paths would now be permit bikes. It was a sort of a response to not potentially really putting in a lot of bike infrastructure at the time. So footpaths universally became bike paths. So since that time, I think what we've been seeing at Britannia is some conflict, because it is a narrow path. It's not wide enough to accommodate cyclists and pedestrians and all the sorts of users that we see walking along that path. But we do have a tension because of the fact that it is a quick route across to the principal shared path. So particularly I've observed, when kids riding to school, say to the new high school over in Subi, that's a cut through to get onto that shared principal shared path. So I think this has been an attempt to try to investigate a way to make what is already not working another option. What I would say to you is that I do, being there regularly, I can see that having cyclists and scooters going, quickly along that, where you've got all sorts of things, activities happening there, it does potentially become problematic when you've got soccer balls, dogs, etc. But I think that my thought would be that rather than just removing this whole scale, that we would continue to investigate options for safe cycling, for a community route for local movements between Britannia Road and Burke Street, so that we're still actually considering the fact that we do have a conflict already happening, and that if we don't investigate how to funnel bikes to make that connection through, that this will continue to happen. So I think that we would potentially be leaving an issue that's unresolved, but by making this agnostic to Britannia Reserve and looking at other routes, I think we could continue to investigate without it necessarily having to involve Britannia Reserve. So I just exercise some caution in removing that whole scale, given that we do have some tension already happening at Britannia Reserve because of that connection through the principal shared path. Councillor Loden.
So a follow-up question on that. So if we were instead to amend the action to be investigate options to provide safe cycling and then delete along the eastern side of Britannia Reserve, safe cycling to provide a community route for local movement between Britannia Road and Burke Street, recognising that there is strong community opposition to a continuation of bikes in that area. What steps would the city then take? Would they then look to divert down Brentham Street instead to provide that cycling infrastructure instead?
Through the chair, yes, potentially looking at Brentham Street and other routes within that area that's identified within the plan.
So I'll move that amendment instead, which is item 19, investigate options to provide for safe cycling, to provide a community route for local movement between Britannia Road and Burke Street. And if I get a seconder, I'll speak to that item.
It's seconded by Councillor Castle.
Thank you. So I've been in this park as well, and I observed that conflict that we see between cyclists and pedestrians and dogs and everything. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's a lot of activity. If we look at our hierarchy, our priority is pedestrians first, then bikes, then public transport, then cars. So in this context, if we're talking about priorities, we should be prioritizing our pedestrians first. And in that context, that means finding a way to move the cyclists out of this space. I look at that. I'm not going to tell you how to do the design. I'm going to give you a suggestion here, maybe. We have that on-ramp that goes onto that cycle path. If you remove that and replaced it with a curb, that would probably provide a sufficient barrier to stop commuter cyclists going through that route. And then they would be diverted down to other streets, which would probably be Brentham, to be honest. We still, I think, want to be able to provide for kids to go cycling around that park. That's a fantastic place to take your kids for a bike ride. It's nice and flat. I've done it with all of my kids and attempted to teach them how they ride their bikes down there. But I don't think those are the people that we're worried about. We're worried about, to be honest, people like me when I'm commuting to work. I don't go through Brentham, Britannia Reserve. I go down the principal path along the freeway because that's my quickest route in. But I can see that if I lived elsewhere, I might use that as my way to sneak through to get to that path. But if you create that bit more of a barrier, they have to mount a curb or something like that, that'll remove those cyclists out of there. So hopefully with this amendment, what we can see is a shift to the way we manage that and using that as an opportunity to reduce that conflict between bikes and pedestrians in that area, because as the mayor said, it's a busy space, and to be honest, it's only getting busier every time you go down there. There's more and more stuff, which is great to see that it's being activated and used. But the last thing we want to see is, someone getting rear-ended by a cyclist travelling along at 30 k's an hour.
Thank you, Councillor Loden. Councillor Castle.
Thank you. Look, I agree. I think that this is a good middle ground to hit so that we can still address the issues that have been identified without necessarily presupposing a solution for them.
Councillors, any comments on the amendment? Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? The amendment is carried. We're back to the substantive. Is there any further discussion on the bike plan? Okay, I'll move the substantive motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. We can invite our other council members back in. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, everyone. 9.2 is the next item, which is 33 Smith Street, Highgate, proposed 6 group dwellings. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Councillor Loden. Councillor Gontaszewski.
Nothing further to add. Thank you for the comments in the briefing note and the comments in the gallery today. I support the officer recommendation.
Councillor Loden.
Yes, I also support the officer recommendation. Just to provide a comment back on the tree question, which is my favourite topic. So there's always a good chance to talk about it a bit more. I can accept that in this specific case, it's probably not appropriate to stick a tree right in front of the church. But it's still an opportunity I'd like us to investigate in the future. So administration consider themselves forewarned.
We would always expect it, Councillor Loden. Councillors, any further comments on this item? Okay, I'll move it. All those in favour? I declare the item carried. That brings us to the controversy of, was it 9.8 or 9.9? We landed on 9.9, which is the outcome of advertising Amendment 11 to Local Planning Scheme number 2, the Royal Perth Hospital Emergency Flight Pass. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded by Councillor Loden. Councillor Gontaszewski.
Appreciate that this is a result of a long-term discussions amongst a number of interested parties, and it's an important item to get locked down. And just again, another thanks for the additional additional information that came forward in between briefing and meeting around the development opportunities for the sites in question.
Nothing, councillors? Look, I took a lot of value from the additional information that was provided. I'd like to thank the director for coming to have a chat with me about that today. Just in particular, when we're looking at heights, the notes point out that that's in metres, and that in effect that really is saying that the in particular, we're talking about the concrete batching plants last week and the opportunity there. That actually could go as high as 18 stories on one of the sites and 22 on the other. And I did check that is still with a decent floor height. So not sort of compromising on good design there. So I was very happy to hear that, and I really appreciate the additional information that was provided by Mr. Sugar during the week as well. Just to let you know that 6PR is interested in this and has asked me to talk about it tomorrow afternoon. Go figure. But it is interesting. It's a nice sort of intersection of various planning elements coming together. So, and a very important service. So I'm, happy that we're able to support this, and I appreciate there's been a lot of comprehensive work that has gone into it. And at the same time, we're still remaining, able to sort of really go high on those sites. Whilst transitioning to lower heights within the Claysbrook area. So thanks, that was invaluable information to receive. Any further comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now we are going to go to item 9.10 next, because we do have our legal advisor present.